I want to know if there's an element that, like, if you go back 100 years, you would see a lot more wild spaces and far less human spaces. If you take it like case of Sri Lanka, it was 88% wilderness in 1940s, whereas now it's only 18%. So in a sense, the animals got pushed into the wildlife reserves. But is there an element where now they are adapting and coming and like evolution-wise coming to finding a way to live with humans, with human spaces?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It very well could be the case, because if the animals don't adapt, they are going to die. Okay, that is one aspect. But the other aspect is also that all the large-bodied animals like elephants and humans and leopards need large spaces. It is just inherent that we will need large spaces. So it could be either way. Even these agricultural landscapes where I worked, before 1980s, there was no irrigation and it was dry. So that time wolves used to be there. When irrigation came in, the wolves moved out because it became wet agriculture, and the leopards moved in. So it's constant adaptation, and you really can't say what's happening, then.
Sorry, thank you very much. The conflict that you talk of, is it mostly in the new residential areas or in the traditional villages?
That's a nice question. Yeah, the traditional villages have less conflict because they know how to deal with the animals. And I would always curse these urban people who I am also a part of and say, oh, they are just... But we realize that when you start engaging with them, they are also as open to change and open to being reasonable. You'll get one or two who are really crabby, but pretty much the rest of them are willing to engage and willing to accept these animals in their space. So it can be changed, the way they view these animals.
Are there any cases of major man-eating in India now, like there was in the Rudraprayag man-eater's case and the Pana man-eater?
Yeah, so suddenly, so even these areas where I worked in, there were, like Bombay also had a lot of cases where leopards had killed people. I don't know how to define the term man-eating because I think it's a very colonial term. As a biologist, I would say they killed people. Okay, and some places they still are, but what we are finding out is that they come and then they can also go. Many places, the attacks on people have stopped or really decreased. So it's not a static thing. It's not a permanent thing that's there.
In your presentation, I saw two leopards occupying same territory. Are they both females?
Yeah.
My other question is, have they changed their territorial behavior with utilizing these agricultural lands?
Good question again. So one is that of the mother and the other was the subadult male. So he will leave her area. So that's why it was the same. But Bombay has the highest density of leopards we've seen anywhere. They have nearly 40 animals in 100 square kilometers. So we really don't know how they are using the space. So unless we collar them or something, we won't know how they are. But then Bombay, some parts of Bombay have human density of 1 lakh people per square kilometer. And people live like that. So, and leopards are very adaptable. Humans are also very adaptable. So we adapt to different situations. That's why we are across the world.
Vidya, I wanted to know whether India's landscape has changed a lot in the last century in terms of population density increases. Am I correct? Okay. So wildlife, especially leopards, are the leopard populations now getting isolated and pocketed in areas, or is there still connectivity? I mean, genetic connectivity rather than connectivity through forest cover and landscape.
Right. So I don't know if India's, I think a lot of forests have gone, but at the time of independence, we were still 100 people per square kilometer. That was a lot of people. Yeah, so I don't know. And what we are finding with all these wild animals, leopards, even tigers, is that they use agricultural landscapes in the night time to move. Like, and they can walk 30 to 40 kilometers in the night. So leopards, which are much better to hide, I think can still move, but tigers, they are probably restricted to the forests because they're much bigger, they can be seen. So, yeah, I think the tiger population, I think genetic studies are finding that it is more isolated than it was long back. They compared the skins got during the British times with cats collected now, and they find that the genetic relatedness was much more then than it is now. Tiger, yeah.
I noted that you were referring to the forest department that came to rescue the leopard, and so is there a separate wildlife department, or is it the forest department having responsibility? Because in Sri Lanka, I believe we have separate, and is it all under one authority in India?
Yeah. So we have one forest department, but that forest department has a wildlife wing which takes care of the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. And it has another wing which is called the territorial wing, which takes care of all the non-wildlife areas. And they are not trained in wildlife, and wildlife is not even their mandate, although they by law are protecting it. So they are not trained, not clued in, and not equipped either. So it's under the same forest department, but because it's a non-wildlife wing, they're not equipped.
Yeah, it's just a rough idea. Do you have an account of the leopard population in India?
So it's hard to count them because they occur so much in human use landscape. If you put cameras, many times they're lost and all that. But still, there is an estimate that there are some 14,000 leopards in India.
Do you have any statistics to show that the leopard population and the tiger population in India have increased?
So leopards, it's very hard because they are in all kinds of places, so it's hard to count them. But tiger populations, yes, they have increased since 10 years back. About 1,300 or so, I think.
Yeah, one more question from me. That the leopard diurnal and nocturnal behavior, is it governed by the presence of the tiger or the presence of humans, or both? And where both are absent, there are no tigers and no people, is the leopard relatively diurnal in its behavior? What have you all gathered?
I don't think there's any place in India where there are no people and no tigers. But where the leopards occur in human use landscapes, they are definitely entirely nocturnal. And I think this is just like hearing people talk, because I don't know about the results in a protected area. Wherever the leopards have been collared in a protected area, there are people there also. So, but generally, I don't know. I mean, I would expect them to be more diurnal where there are no people, even if tigers are there.
I believe in Sri Lanka, the negative interactions with leopards is much less than what you find in India. We have been in Sri Lanka for a few days and seen some of the leopard country. What is your advice on how we should, from now on, set about to minimize whatever negative interactions that we are experiencing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think you all have started at a right time to ask these questions and, ensure that the media plays a big role in how this issue flares out. So engagement with the media and, empowering the forest department to do right things. You guys as a community ensuring that there's no pressure on the department to translocate and do wrong things. I think you all have started discussing this at a right time. So I don't see the problem from flaring up like it did in India.
Just to take you away from the leopards, I'm interested in the giri lions. Is the population increasing or is it decreasing?
So the Gir lions is a fascinating story. From 2,000 square kilometer national park, the lions have extended their range to 10,000 square kilometers. And the remaining 8,000 square kilometers is all human use landscape, croplands and orchards. And for some reason, the Gujarati people just love their lions. So I have an incredible film here called Wandering Lions of India, and I'll maybe give it to Spencer if you have some time when you can show it. It just shows how amazingly comfortable the people are with the lions. So I think a lot of it has to do whether the people accept these predators as part of their landscape or not. And the Gujaratis do. They like them so much they don't even want to give it to the next state, even though the governments are the same now.
We have a problem of leopard supposedly in some plantation, tea estate. So there's been an attempt to catch the leopard, and some people have used dogs to attract the leopard. And so is there any experience in India about this? And obviously the ladies who are plucking the tea are stressed, and any advice and idea you would have on this?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So there's a lot of issues in Indian tea garden landscape, but what we found out is where the tea gardens, where the management, before starting plucking in an area, they beat drums in a direction so that the leopard is flushed off before the workers start working. Another thing is if the cubs have been seen there, then they don't work there for a couple of days. But I don't think here they are denning in the tea gardens. I've not heard of cubs being found. There the cubs are actually found. So the mom is denning in the tea gardens. But beating the bushes with drums in one direction, I think is a good thing to do. And the labor will also feel that you guys are doing something for their safety as well.
Okay, I have one more question. If you compare with Yala National Park and to a national park in India, because of the absence of the tigers, is it more easy for you to spot the leopard in Yala as compared to a national park in India?
No, so I don't think it's a question of whether there is a tiger or not, because we have a lot of tiger reserves where the tigers behave like your Yala leopards. Okay, so I think it is where they realize that people are watching them and people are not threatening to them, they will do it. So if you do that in Vilpattu or anywhere else over time, they will start behaving the same way. And there's one place in Rajasthan which is a human use landscape where the leopards are totally comfortable, people watching them. So there's actually tourism happening in this human use landscape because of certain history, like the ruler of that place was baiting the leopards, so the leopards were used to people coming and feeding them. And they show themselves now. You drive there, you see 5 leopards one evening, and it's not even a national park. You can check out the name, Jawai, Jawai. There'll be a lot of stuff on YouTube and Google. So, I mean, just coming back, I think we understand these animals very, very little. You give them a chance, to show themselves, they will do that if we are not being aggressive.
So, just to wind up, if I can go through once again, thanking our sponsors, Nations Trust Bank, for supporting our monthly lectures. ProImage and Mohan Fernando, who is here this evening with us, for support with the video coverage in the past lectures, which are now available on the WNPS website. CJ and Team Sarva advertising for the creative support in actually getting these flyers and stuff out to you. Dilma Tea for the service, hopefully you will be enjoying in a few minutes. And we would like to also acknowledge our corporate partners. They are NTB, that is Nations Trust Bank, NDB, National Development Bank, Sampath Bank, Mr. Ajita de Costa, TJ, Brandix, John Keel's Office Automation, Canon, and Sanjay. And then finally, to thank Vidya. I think she was great in fielding a lot of questions because I think she is having a little problem with a cold and fighting a cold. And it's her first visit to Sri Lanka, and I think we've been overworking her a little bit. And she's not getting enough chance to have a look at our beautiful country. So answering questions like Yala and stuff, we are trying to get her across if possible, either to Yala or Vilpattu. But anyways, obviously Vidya her experience in India is just amazing, and the length and breadth of what she has to offer, I think we are indeed very fortunate and very grateful and thankful that she shared of her time and her experience with us. So I'd like to thank Vidya once again, and if I could invite our President Rukshan Jayawardena to come up and just to give a token of our appreciation to Vidya. Thank you very much, Vidya.